Welcome back, everyone. I'm your host, Leah Massey, and today I'm excited to be joined by my guest, Luann Kinney.
Hi there. Hi.
Hi. Luann, thanks so much for being here. To start things off, take us back. What originally drew you into real estate nearly 30 years ago?
Well, I bought a house
Mm-hmm.
for sale by owner and knew nothing about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a new build. And, I asked the contractor, "Are you going to put baseboard? Are you going to do this? And you going to do that?" And he said yes. And none of it was in writing.
Mm-hmm.
And we closed. He got his money. And we never saw him again.
Oh.
And that always sat with me is like nobody was there to protect me
Mm-hmm.
because the attorney just did the title search. The bank just gave us the money.
Right.
And then hadn't worked for a long time. And a broker advertised,
Mm-hmm.
are you thinking of career in real estate? Went and saw her. And back then you had to have a brokerage sign for you to take the classes.
Oh, okay.
So signed with her, took the classes, and found out I was good at it. And I really enjoyed it
Mm-hmm.
because I like to help people.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So, did you always see this as a long term career or did it evolve over time?
It really I thought I'd be a salesperson all
Uh-huh.
my life,
Yeah.
and then, I became a single person
Uh-huh.
and knew that that's where I was headed, and, as you know,
Yeah.
you salesperson, you live on commission only,
Right.
and I needed that stability, so I
Mhm.
went for my broker's license,
Right.
became an associate broker, and eventually a branch manager,
Uh-huh.
and, also, it was a lot of, if I'm a salesperson, I can help buyers and sellers.
Right.
If I'm a associate broker, I can help agents be better at helping buyers and sellers. So
Uh-huh.
to me, it was like a natural step.
Right, right. Since you were already doing
Yeah.
it, yeah. Now, were those early days, what were those early days like as a brand new agent? Because you mentioned before how it was a little different. So how was it like?
Well, there was no internet.
Okay.
So email was just coming out. It was in the mid 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Email was just getting popular, and most people didn't use it.
Mm-hmm.
So you sat at your desk, and the phone rang and rang
Oh.
and rang. And, I would be in the office 3 days a week and
Mhm.
always have at least three listing opportunities a week.
Mhm.
And buyers called the listing office to see the properties. I was fortunate enough to work in a small community that she had most of the listings,
Mhm.
so my phone was always busy. Now, my first year was really lean. I was in Fayette County. We're
Uh-huh.
talking really, really lean. It took a good 4 years till I made money that I
Right.
could actually call myself living on.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, what surprised you most about the industry when you first started?
All the rules.
Yeah.
There is a lot of rules in
Isn't
real
it?
estate. And I love my original broker dearly
Mhm.
and things. I can't say enough about her, but she was a small independent broker
Mhm.
and it was not formal training.
Mhm.
And now I realize how much I lacked
Mhm.
because I didn't have that formal training.
Oh, okay. Okay. Now, talking about now you had mentioned earlier about being an associate broker and a
Hmm.
manager. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Okay.
For the viewers who may not know exactly what an associate broker is, how does that differ from a real estate agent?
So, a licensee, a
Uh-huh.
salesperson,
Yeah.
they take 75 hours classes.
Mhm.
They in fundamentals and practice.
Uh-huh.
They score a 75 or higher in each of those courses and
Mhm.
get a transcript. Then they can take their test and they become a licensed salesperson in the state of
Mhm.
Pennsylvania. An associate broker has to work at least 3 years as a salesperson.
Mhm.
They take 240 hours of continuing or broker's courses.
Mhm.
There are certain ones you have to take, and then there's some electives. And then you have to have so many transactions to be able to apply.
Mhm.
It's a lot more office management, property management,
Mhm.
investment properties, law. It's
Uh-huh.
a lot of education. And once you get that broker's license, you truly are a broker. But in Pennsylvania, you can either be called a broker of record, which
Mhm.
is, runs the company,
Okay.
or you can be an associate broker. An associate broker is nothing more than a more educated salesperson, you know, if that's the role they're playing. The other role an associate broker can take on is branch manager, which I was up until about a month ago.
Okay.
Yeah,
We'll talk about yeah.
yeah.
And is that associate broker, is that sorta is do you have to keep on getting your license renewed with that as
Yes.
well? Okay.
Yeah, and, they've always talked about associate brokers taking more education, but it still is only 14 hours every 2 years, just like a salesperson.
Okay. Okay. What motivates you to take that next step in your career?
Stability and
Okay.
income, and also, I think that when you're good at something,
Mhm.
you know, sharing it is a good thing,
Yeah.
and I thought working with the other agent I really enjoy people,
Yeah.
so I enjoyed working with agents.
Yeah. And that's why I had invited you too, because I know my experiences with you always you like to educate and you were open to questions and stuff like that. Now, can you walk us through the process of becoming an associate broker? A little bit more about that.
So, it's different for everybody.
Uh-huh.
I wanted to get mine done as quickly as possible. So, you can take those classes, and the first class you take, from the first class you take as for associate broker to the last class, you have to take the license test within 10 years. So if you start taking your broker's classes today,
Hmm.
you would have to finish your classes and take your tests before the finish of that first class, the date of that first class.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh.
Um, uh, I took mine in 3 years,
Hmm.
because I wanted to get it done and to move on. Lots of people, I have a person in one of the offices now that I'm still in, and I think he's taken about 4 classes.
Hmm.
So he has maybe halfway, and I keep reminding him, "You're getting close." It's probably been 3 years now. I said, "You're getting close where you could start losing those
Right.
classes. You need
Hmm.
to move on." Because if you don't take it in 10 years, you have to retake the classes
I did.
again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's the same kind of like now that you're an associate broker, the real estate agent stuff is separate. Like you're no longer doing the real estate stuff. Now you're doing the associate broker type classes. And
Yes.
okay. All right. What skills or knowledge did you have to develop to qualify for that role?
I I had to have, I think it's 61 transactions.
Hmm.
And so that's buyer agency, listing contracts, property management,
Hmm.
any kind of real estate.
Hmm.
I had to prove that I had 61 of those
Hmm.
over at least a 3-year period.
Okay.
Also, you have to have that 240 hours of education,
Hmm.
which comes out to 8 courses,
Hmm.
and then take the licensing exam, which is a whole nother story
No.
compared to the
Yeah.
salesperson.
Now, does that 61 transactions, does that include like rentals and leases?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it includes listings and buyer contracts that you did not like sometimes, not necessarily in this market, but every once in a while you'll list a property
Uh-huh.
and it expires.
Yeah.
You had a listing, that's considered a transaction.
Oh, okay.
So it
Okay.
doesn't have to be consummated or closed.
Okay. And it could be commercial too and everything. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
What were the biggest challenges in leveling up from an agent to an associate broker?
Really, it just makes you a little bit more professional.
Hmm.
You realize the importance of
Yeah.
the job and the importance of what you're doing. Buying and selling a house is the biggest thing people do in their lifetime.
Hmm.
So I think I know a lot of licensees that are probably just as good, if not better, than some associate brokers.
Hmm.
But I think the knowledge of being an associate that comes along with being an associate broker makes it a little bit more you're more aware
Yeah.
of your responsibilities
Yeah.
and those fiduciary duties.
And those classes too, like even with real estate, when you're renewing your license, they cost too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And brokers' classes are a lot more expensive.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So you got to be really be dedicated to even
Yes.
taking. Yeah.
Yeah.
How did your mindset or responsibilities change at that stage?
I took things more serious.
Hmm.
Sales agreements, 14 pages.
Uh,
Sometimes you sort of kind of glide over things if people are in a hurry.
hmm.
And, I think as an associate broker, with my knowledge at least, it was like, no, we really need to talk about this. I want you
Hmm.
to understand, and I made sure that I followed the rules. One of the rules is that people think I'm silly, but one of the rules is you give people an estimated cost sheet before they sign the contract.
Hmm.
What does it matter? I
Yeah.
always use the example of if I give you an estimated cost sheet and tell you you need to bring $10,000 to closing and your payment's going to be 1,200, and you thought you only had to need 6,000
Right.
and your payment would be less than 1,000, you're not going to go any further.
Right.
So I use it more of look at all the time you saved by doing it the right way and the
Right.
legal way,
Hmm.
doing it in the order that they want
Yeah.
you to.
Yeah.
So those are the things that I think stick out in my mind.
Yeah. And it saves you trouble and stress and all that.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, You've been a branch manager for about 20 years.
Yes.
Okay, that's incredible. How did that opportunity come about?
Well, I got my license.
Mhm,
I talked to a couple lenders that I really, really trusted. And
mhm,
I said, look, I'm a new associate broker.
mhm,
I never want to own my own business. Liability is way too much. Um, I said, who do you think would be the best training company for me to learn to be a branch
mhm,
manager? And she told me. I called the owner because I knew them, well,
mhm,
the broker of record,
mhm.
and I said, I'd like to open an office in Uniontown. And they said, great, when would you like to meet? I met, we hadn't had that company
Uh-huh.
didn't have an office. And they said, let's open an office. And I was
Oh.
like, okay. And fortunate for me, I got 11 agents
Uh-huh.
fairly quick.
Wow.
And Uniontown is a tough market to get in. It's a
Mhm,
lot of independent brokers.
mhm,
So, and at that point, I didn't want to move out of the area.
mhm.
So I told the company I worked for, I said, you know what? You can move me if you want. And they did, and
Mhm,
they moved me into a huge office. I was there for about 7 years and then learned a lot,
mhm.
learned a lot about people and things not to do
Uh-huh.
and things to do. And then I interviewed with another owner that I knew, and I've been there today. Can I
Oh.
tell my story about never burning bridges?
Oh, yeah, go please.
So, I worked for Northwood Realty,
Mhm.
and now Northwood Realty and Prudential have come together and
Uh-huh.
formed the Preferred Realty.
Mhm,
Well, worked for Northwood, and I resigned to
mhm.
come to work for Prudential. And lo and behold, Prudential and Northwood came together and became Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, the Preferred Realty. I love that.
Uh-huh.
And never ever burn a bridge because my old boss is now my new boss.
Yeah.
So in real estate is the one job you cannot burn bridges. You
Mhm.
know, if you have a bad experience,
Yeah,
smooth it over, make it better
yeah.
because you never know what's going to happen in the years to come.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's some good advice, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. What does a branch manager do on a day-to-day basis?
Our biggest job, believe it or not, is recruiting.
Mhm.
It's finding new people to
Uh-huh.
get into the business, and it's also um, believing in your company and your office enough that you can recruit experienced people.
Okay.
And that's usually just leading by example,
Mhm,
being out there and being a source of information,
mhm,
and having your office support you. So that's the biggest role is recruiting. Also, budgeting. You know,
mhm.
we're basically our own little shop inside a big company.
Okay.
So we have to be self-supporting. If
Mhm.
we're not bringing in enough profit to cover the expenses, then we've got to do more recruiting.
Oh, okay.
Or if worse comes to worse, maybe that market just doesn't. Maybe it's too saturated with agents, whatever, they may
Uh-huh.
choose to close an office.
Oh, okay.
So, but that's the big thing is running my business like anybody else,
Oh, okay.
you know?
Yeah, I think people don't think about that, but you guys, yeah, the recruiting part of it, getting the agents
Yeah,
in
that's
there.
probably 80% of our
Is it?
job.
Okay.
Yeah.
What skills are essential to being effective in that role?
Knowledge,
Knowledge.
knowledge,
Okay.
listening.
Mhm.
I'm a big listening person. Whether I'm working as a salesperson for a buyer or seller or working with you as an
Mhm.
agent trying to help you, listening is key.
Mhm.
It's not so important that I talk.
Right.
It's important that I listen to what you're saying and help you with your needs.
Mhm. Now, how did your role shift from being focused on your own production to leading others?
That was fine with me. I can solve other people's problems.
Uh-huh.
If you were working under my office and things and you had a problem, I could talk to that seller or buyer, and there's a little bit of a disconnect.
Yeah.
They look at me as the supervisor.
Mhm.
And again, listen, a lot of times all they need is somebody to listen because they're upset.
Yeah.
When you're an agent, you sort of kind of don't like that you upset somebody. So
Mhm.
me personally, that was probably my biggest weakness was I tended to hide whenever I did not bad things, but
Yeah.
things that people weren't happy with
Right.
or
Right.
that I couldn't solve their problem
Right.
quickly because nobody likes to not solve a problem.
Yeah. It's human nature.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I like being that problem solver.
Now, some people might have a question. This is a question too. Can the managers also have have clients of their own?
It depends,
Okay.
our favorite
Okay. Uh-huh.
answer. Um, our company believes that we should be devoting time to all the agents
Mhm.
and helping them, train them,
Mhm.
supervise, guide. Other companies, they let them compete. I personally like the way our company does
Mhm.
it because if I'm out there looking for business as part of the management team,
Mhm.
um, agents may feel that I'm taking business away from them.
Yeah.
So I like the idea that we have that restriction where we can only do a few transactions a year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Other companies, I can't speak for them.
Okay. What were some early challenges managing agents, especially if you had been peers before?
That was tough.
Mhm.
That was
Yeah.
tough because now I'm the boss.
Yeah.
And 2 weeks prior, I was the same as them.
Mhm.
You know, getting that associate broker license didn't mean I was any different than I was 3 weeks earlier,
Mhm.
and, that's a hard pill to swallow because, you know, they knew me,
Mhm.
and now all of a sudden I'm supposed to be this special person with all the knowledge, and really and truly, I didn't have that. I mean, I took the classes,
Mhm.
but I was never a broker of an office before in my life.
Mhm.
So, sometimes I probably was too eager to be in charge,
Mhm.
which is why, I was glad to move to Somerset and get that experience where I wasn't so much a peer
Okay.
and things. And I was very active in the Realtors Association. So going outside my comfort zone,
Mhm.
that elevated me a little in their eyes. They
Yeah, okay.
saw me as a little bit more of an expert
Mhm.
and things. So I think sometimes it's better to go outside your common area and things and just learn the business.
Right.
You have to be open to learn.
Mhm. Well, I appreciate that honesty telling that because that's true.
Yeah.
How do you balance being supportive versus holding agents accountable?
Um, a lot of times it's just the education.
Mhm.
You know, I'll we'll go through the whole system and things and their issues and say, well, what do you think you should do?
Mhm.
And then it's like, well, let's talk to legal counsel because our company has a
Mhm.
legal counsel. And I'll say, what do you think he's going to tell you?
Mhm.
So, and then next time, if it's a repeat, I'll say, isn't this a lot like last time? How did we solve that one? So I
Mhm.
let them solve it. And sometimes, probably 80% of the time, as they talk through, they already know the answer.
Yeah.
So I let them do a lot of talking to figure it out.
Yeah. And do they usually have that moment? I know I had that too, where you have that moment where it's like, okay, I can do this. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like
Yeah.
they slowly like let go of your hand and like go, yeah.
When I was manager, we used to laugh about it. I always set a boundary, and I think all agents
Mhm.
should too. I only answer my phone between these hours and these hours.
Mhm.
Let a message, and I'll get back to you. But there was some agents who never ever called me, and
Mhm.
if they called me outside those hours, I knew I needed to answer
Yeah.
because they never called.
Uh-huh.
So it must be a real problem.
Oh, okay.
And that's what happens
Yeah.
is after they've solved enough of their own issues or we've solved them
Mhm.
together, they need help when they call.
Yeah. And I think in this field also too, there's that fear because there's so much buying a home is such a huge deal.
Yeah,
So I think a lot of times you just feel like you got a lot of weight on your shoulders with that. But yeah.
and liability.
Yes. 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 What separates a good manager from a great one in real estate?
Knowing when to step back and
Mhm.
let them move forward,
Mhm.
and also just being there. I
Yeah.
think just knowing that you can reach out to a manager is huge
Mm.
and that they will help you through,
Mm.
but they're not going to hold your hand.
Yeah.
I always tell people, I'm here as long as you need me, but eventually you're not going to need me much longer.
Mhm.
And I'll still be here, but you're going to be able to solve 90% of the problems on your own. The other is I pride myself, even though I'm just management, not office manager, I pride myself in knowing how to do n- most of the things that our company offers. So that if somebody comes and says, hey, how do you do this? I can at least get them started.
Mhm.
I don't want to always have to send them off to tech or training
Yeah.
or whatever. I want to be at least able to start helping them.
Yeah. That's and then just real quick too, since you have been in the industry a while and then also you played these roles, what's something that you would say to an agent that is kind of struggling with that confidence when, stepping out and doing what they need to do?
I try to. and it's something and maybe you didn't mind, but
Mhm.
no one likes to role play,
Mhm.
and I'm a big role player,
Mhm.
and that's one of the things. If I see somebody really struggling with confidence, I'll make them role play. I'll
Mhm.
make them role play with each other, with me, with
Mhm.
their kids, with their dog,
Mhm.
with a pillow, whatever,
Yeah.
until they really can know them. Once you know the forms, the confidence can come. You're
Mm.
just so afraid of someone asking you a question you might not know the answer to.
That's key.
Yeah,
Yes, that's what it really comes down to.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, and learning
Yeah.
that it's okay to say, "I don't know, but you know what, I'll find out."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and, you know, you're afraid to say that because if you don't know, well, why are you telling me a house?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so yeah, you have to get to the point where you know the forms enough that they can't catch you on those.
Mhm.
So if they ask you something outside the forms, you can say, "I don't know, but I'll get the answer."
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, you said it right there, Loretta. I think that was mine too. I think, yeah.
yeah,
So that's a common thing you notice?
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Um, at some point, you also become a licensed instructor.
Yes.
What inspired you to that transition?
Well, our friend, Jim
Mhm.
Skinzer that passed,
Mhm.
he really pushed me when I worked for Northwood,
Yeah.
and I did that for a while in person,
Mhm.
which was fun. And then right before COVID, um, the Preferred Realty
Yeah.
offered me that same position with them, and I had my first class, and
Uh-huh.
then we got locked down. So I also it was really cool, I got to be the first Zoom instructor,
Mm.
and that was an experience, oh my. And, eventually, we all had to get licensed to be distance learners,
Mhm.
instructor distance learning instructor, and, I loved it.
Mhm.
I always tell people I wanted to be an actress, but never had the nerve to be on stage and do that, and when I was on Zoom, I sorta got to live my dream.
Uh-huh.
Um, I was given good information, but I just pretended I was an instructor,
Oh.
and it worked. You know, it was fun.
Uh-huh.
Matter of fact, I just got to do that last week. There was a class big enough that they needed 2 people,
Yeah.
and I got to jump back in because I still have my license.
Oh, okay.
And I really did like instructing. I
Did you?
really,
Okay.
really did. Yeah.
Yeah. What does it take to become a licensed real estate instructor?
Um, Basically, the school makes the requirements.
Uh-huh.
The school is responsible for making sure that you have the criteria and the credentials to be able to do that. So, with real estate educators, I had to sit through the course and then I had to teach in front of Jim Skinzer,
Mhm.
which was really hard, but had to teach in front of him. And then he was the one that certified me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Alright.
so,
What kinds of courses do you teach and who are they for?
I teach pre-licensed courses,
Mhm.
the fundamentals and the practice. Um, when COVID started, there was so many people taking the classes,
Mhm.
usually 75 people on
Oh,
screen,
wow.
and that's a lot of people. You have
Yeah.
2 screens and, so we had an instructor that did all the instructing, and that was, fundamentals. We had Sandy, she did the instructing, and I watched everybody to make sure they were on screen, to make sure
Okay.
they were paying attention,
Mhm.
doing all the background work. And then for practice, I was the lead instructor, and
Mhm.
Sandy took over the background work. And I really enjoyed that, just doing the pre license class.
Mhm.
Fundamentals is exactly what it sounds. It's like, what is land?
Yeah.
Center of the earth to infinity and
Mhm.
beyond. All those lots and lots of terms. I like practice because it talks about agency and it talks about
Mhm. Yeah.
contracts and employment. We really, every time we go out, we're really doing a job interview
Mhm.
to get a buyer or seller to let us work for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, when you think of, and I think I was good at explaining that to people.
Mhm.
I always tell people if I can make my 6-year-old understand, I can make anybody
Yeah.
extend.
That's true.
Yeah.
How does teaching differ from managing agents?
Teaching is just, we're not really teachers, we're instructors. We're
Mm.
just providing information. We do have a curriculum we have to follow
Yeah.
and things, but we're a lot of storytellers
Mhm.
because the best way to get people to retain, and that, as I'm thinking off the top of my head, that's sort of kind of a similarity with
Yeah.
management. I tell stories, well, Leah had this transaction, it was really bad, and this
Mhm.
is how we worked it out.
Yeah.
in practice and fundamentals, same thing. Tell a story, the boundaries were this.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot of storytelling, a lot more storytelling, and sort of emphasizing what's important. Our job as instructors is to help you pass the license exam.
Mhm.
Our job as managers is to lower liability. So
Mm.
that's the big difference there,
Okay.
you know.
Mm.
Scare them to death when they're taking the classes
Yeah, I know.
and then help them whenever they're a manager. Hmm.
Um, what have you learned about the industry by educating others?
It's ever changing.
Yeah.
Anytime I do a timeline, and I used to write this down a lot whenever we met in person, but
Mhm.
now everybody's on Zoom. And I used to do a timeline. You're new, then you're learning, then you become an expert, and then you retire.
Mm.
I said, your learning should be about 85% of your timeline. The minute you become an expert and you don't need to learn anything, retire in 2 weeks
Uh,
because everything changes.
yeah.
You know, um, we were supposed to have agency agreements since 1994, and then
Mhm.
because of the settlement a few years
Mhm.
ago, every all the licensed people that were licensed for such a long time were going, "Why do we need this?" And I'm saying, "We always did."
Yeah.
So I think that just the importance of the laws and the education and keeping up
Yeah.
and taking good courses, not
Mhm.
taking courses to get you through, but taking good courses
Yeah.
that actually help you.
Yeah. Um, do you find that teaching has made you a better leader or broker, and how?
Yes, it did help me because it helped me realize that sometimes we forget what we learned.
Mhm.
We had a couple appraisal issues, and I was able to take out my textbook and go
Mhm.
to that unit, I think it's 20, unit 20,
Mhm.
and say, here's what it says about appraisals, you know, and I was able to help an agent that had a real problem. And only I think because of the language we used
Yeah.
from going back to that course,
Yeah.
we were able to solve the problem because the appraiser was like, "Oh, wait, they know."
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that it just made me more aware.
Yeah.
It brought everything that was in the back of my head to the front.
Right. Right. Yeah. I bet that's really nice to have that in your
Yeah,
pocket. Yeah.
yeah, it was I think the agents appreciated that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And is there many like you that are doing that? Is it the ones that you're talking about now, are they currently practicing too? Like
Yes.
the other all of them are.
Yes.
Okay, so
In the case of Jim Skinzer,
uh-huh.
he owned the real estate school, so
Okay.
he was the educator,
Okay. Yeah.
without a doubt.
Yeah.
And our other instructors, we have one that came from Florida, and she did a lot of property
Okay.
management. Because of her health, she is just an instructor. She's still a licensed salesperson.
Okay.
The other two instructors with real estate educators, they both actively list and sell.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. How does your experience as an instructor influence how you manage agents?
I try to make it fun like we did class.
Mhm.
If you know, I am not the boss. I'm
Mhm.
here to help you.
Yeah.
And I think when you make things fun and interesting and show value, everything today is about value,
Yeah.
Leah. You have to have an item of value.
Mm.
And I think sometimes as a manager, the best value we can bring is knowledge,
Mm.
you know.
Yeah.
So I just try to make it fun. Regardless how bad it is, you can find that silver lining.
Yeah, that's true. Now, how about another question I wanted to ask is that does it help sometimes too, as being a manager, have been a manager, and then also being the instructor, and maybe seeing like going to the other instructor and say maybe we need to fine
Yes.
tune this because it's not coming, working out when they come.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
sometimes I would actually talk about maybe, say, "You know what? I don't think we're stressing this enough
Mm-hmm.
because when they get their license, they totally forgot."
Mm-hmm.
Because I did have people in my classes that then came to the office I managed, and I'd say, "What's your fiduciary duties?"
Mm-hmm.
And they go, "Oh," I go, "Old car," and it would automatically
Oh, okay.
click.
Yeah.
So, I think that it just made me more aware of what
Mm-hmm.
was important.
Yeah.
And I think that's the benefit of being an instructor when you sell and list or manage,
Yeah.
because you can sort of see where what is really important.
Okay. Yeah. And then you also probably learned it also too can take things from what you've seen as a manager and say, hey, maybe we need to add this. Or
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Have you seen your relationships with agents evolve because you trained them from the start?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
some of the managers prior to me that, I've talked to and things, they say, "I raised them,"
Yeah.
because they get their license, they come to you, and you teach them from the very beginning.
Yeah.
When you adopt somebody from another company, sometimes you have to break some bad habits, or sometimes you learn a good habit that
Yeah.
maybe you wanna embrace something that they did differently than we did.
Right, right.
So it works both
Yeah, it
ways.
works both ways, a
Yeah.
learning experience. You made the decision to step down from a branch manager role into an assistant manager position to focus more on training. Can you walk us through that decision?
Okay, so this is a personal one for me,
Mhm.
and I promise I'll try not to cry, but I cry sometimes.
Mhm.
My brother